Hello and namaste. My name is Tim Halloran and this is a weekly astrology forecast. It's the final week of October. The sun's in Scorpio, the moon's in Virgo, tomorrow it enters Libra. By Saturday it'll move into Scorpio, joining Mercury, Saturn, the North Node, and it'll conjunct the sun for a solar eclipse at 11 degrees Scorpio at 7:46 a.m. this Sunday. So in other words, the energy is perfect to celebrate Halloween tomorrow. It's a celebration of darkness, and indeed this report's going to be all about integrating darkness, integrating emotions in our life. So every astrologer has a bit of a personal flavor, and this is something that I personally feel very strongly about, and when I do astrology I'm very much about integrating darkness. So I'm going to talk a lot about this subject. There's a lot happening right now in the stars to make this a very potent time. And yes, indeed, we are learning just how to do this. It's a very active time. That's what Scorpio is. I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite people, Kali Ma, because she's such a perfect symbol of this type of energy and what it's all about. So this is a Halloween themed report. It's going to be about what is dark, uncomfortable, taboo, and we're going to be learning about how to go there ourselves, how to be not afraid, and how to eventually transcend darkness, integrate darkness, so we are not afraid of the darkness. Yes, and there's no more separation and dualistic, fearful, paranoid mentality. Okay, so a run through of the astrology, and then I'll get to talking about the Scorpio energy and get to ranting about Kali Ma. Hopefully I won't talk too much. But today we have Mercury conjunct Saturn. It's conjunct Saturn for the second time. It'll pass one more time at the end of November. This is not an easy transit. It's heavy. It's depression. It's seriousness. It's passion. It's needing to dig deep and contemplate real, tangible, oftentimes tumultuous territory, because it's about getting stuff on the table right now. That's what this Mercury being retrograde, it's going backwards. It's saying you missed something the first time I passed Saturn. It has to do with finances. It has to do with security. It has to do with emotions. But the whole point is we missed something. A solar eclipse in Scorpio, we missed something. There's something that we didn't realize before, and now we are having light shed on it. We are having light shed on the darkness. So Mercury's passing Saturn. We're thinking seriously. We're dealing with our problems. We're contemplating our problems. And you know, it's a time of reflection, so it may not necessarily be that we have to make a bunch of changes right now, but we certainly are reflecting about them, and we are certainly becoming aware that there are changes that still need to be changed. There are some things that aren't yet fixed yet. Now, tomorrow, Mars will be in exact opposition with Chiron, which is also getting a little bit beat up. And what's getting beat up? It's our masculine energy. Mars is in Virgo. He's trying to be really practical. He wants to get a lot of stuff done. But the Scorpio energy is, it's not so simple. It's not so easy. You got to do things again. You got to do things again. You got to go back and fix things. It's not so clean and simple. There's emotions involved. There's a lot of people involved. It's intimate, it's intricate, and it's complicated. So our wills could be taking a little bit of a beating. We might be, being really pushed to our limits. We might be exhausting our own willpower right now. And that's okay, because again, integrating darkness, this is all about right now, at the end of the day, realizing our strength. We aren't exhausted yet. We can keep going, and the way you find your limits is you push it. So we're getting our limits pushed right now. We're getting our comfort zones pushed right now, and it's all about seeing how much can we transform right now. It's a big physical and chemical reaction, and we want to be jumping right into it. We want to be shape-shifting. We want to be transforming. We want to be expanding. We want to be reaching our roots into places that we haven't felt before. We want to be tapping into the darkness, the unknown, the irrational. It has a lot to do with feelings. So this Chiron aspect is feelings could be getting hurt. Emotions, stuff is contemplated. There's no win-win solution oftentimes right now. I'm strong enough to be able to handle more than one revision. And I'm strong enough to handle your criticism and your criticism, because I know in my heart that I'm trying my best, I will continue to do my best, and we're going to get through it. Okay, now on to Friday. we have the 4th exact Uranus-Pluto square. This is transformation, revolution. It's not, this square is still exact now through 2015. It's a long-term aspect, but Mercury moving back towards Saturn, this solar eclipse in Scorpio, this Uranus-Pluto square, yeah, it's saying you have to still fix some things. There is change that is required right now. And let's not avoid it. The more resistance you put up to the universe, the more it's going to slam you in the face. So it's all about really listening right now and getting in touch with this Scorpio energy, incorporating the darkness, not fighting the darkness, not saying that the darkness is separate and damn the darkness. And I'm not going to be dark. I'm not going to use darkness ever. It's never going to be it's never going to have a spiritual function. And of course, Scorpio energy has a very important spiritual function. And in the case of this Uranus square Pluto, it's passion. It may feel like rage. It's like, this has to change. And it feels explosive, and it feels dark and scary and crazy. Pluto is the nuclear bomb. Uranus is electricity. It's very potent energy. But let's not be intimidated by it. Let's channel this energy. Let's use this energy, There's a very fine line sometimes between anger and passion, because passion is this sort of very fiery, and it is kind of angry, but it's done in the service of love. We use this justified anger, this fire, as a source of energy to make changes. That's what passion's all about. That's what Scorpio's all about. That's what this Uranus-Pluto square is all about. So let's get on to the solar eclipse now, happening on Sunday. This eclipse, it's all the energy now is in Scorpio. On Sunday, the North Node is going to be conjunct Mercury. Get everything out on the table. Really dig it up and just spew it out. Converse it though. Analyze it. Be intellectual about it. Be rational and reasonable about it. Tapping into these emotions and falling into these emotions and being honest and sincere and upfront about these emotions doesn't mean that we have to disregard our rationality. This whole integration of darkness is we're combining rationality and emotions. We're learning how to integrate them. We're learning how to mentally understand our emotions and use our emotions as a form of information themselves. Okay, so Mercury is conjunct the North Node. We're having potent conversations. We're having real talk. We're talking about reality situations. This hurts me and I can't keep doing this. I can't afford this anymore. The funds are out. Yeah? This eclipse is happening a sextile to Mars. It's very energized, using this Mars energy to really rip off and expose and push up this Scorpio stuff. It's a time to rip the Band-Aid off, and it's really, you don't have to be afraid of being rough sometimes. You don't have to be afraid of your own darkness. You don't have to be afraid of your own potency and your own power. Being a spiritual person does not always mean that you're walking around and you're glowing and radiating light and you're talking like in a perfect, calm, and serene manner like Glenda the Good from Wizard of Oz. Do you think Jesus was like Glenda the Good? Do you think that's how he spoke? Do you think that's how he carried himself? No. Why do you think they crucified him? No, Jesus was a thorn in the foot of many, and that's good. Thorns aren't bad. Thorns aren't bad. Pain isn't bad. Transformation isn't bad. Chemical reaction, fuzzy, messy, sticky, busy reality is not bad. So now let's move on to Halloween. This is what I've been saving for the end. So the astrology, we can sort of say, is finished now. I want to talk about Halloween because it is just such a perfect symbol for what's happened to us, what's happened to our culture, what's happened to our spiritual understanding over the course of thousands of years. Okay, so Halloween is Samhain. It's a Celtic, pagan festival. They celebrated the darkness. They celebrated integration of the darkness. They did not shun and run away from and suppress and damn the darkness. They understood it is an aspect of reality. And this is how I do my astrology readings as well. Rasa Leela astrology is about the dance between all various aspects of life. So it is not a battle between the light and the dark. On this earthly plane, it may look like a battle between the light and the dark, but on the higher planes, it's a dance The light and the dark are in love and working together. So we should not be damning and suppressing that aspect of reality. We should not be damning and suppressing any aspect of reality. And Scorpio is an aspect of reality. Everybody has Scorpio in their chart. You can't eliminate it. But guess what they tried to do during the Crusades, during the Middle Ages? They tried to eliminate Scorpio. And you know, even astrology, you could consider scorpionic energy because it's so taboo. And there are so many people that even today are afraid of, you know, astrology is sorcery. You can't use it in a spiritual way. You know, it's all about predicting the future and, you know, manipulating 3D reality and whatnot, when it's not about that. But during the medieval ages, you can even look back at astrology charts that they made back then. They would sometimes leave out Scorpio. They would just have a blank spot there. There's charts of the human body and the different astrology signs that correlate with them. So the head is Aries, the feet is Pisces, the genitals is Scorpio. You know, it's sex, you know, it is the genitals, it is the root chakra. And they just left that blank. Like the sign of Scorpio doesn't exist anymore. Appropriately, during this same time is when all the Crusades were happening and the pagan religions were getting wiped out. So Samhain was originally a celebration of the dark. It was also a time of getting in contact with the dead, with your ancestors, which wasn't a spooky taboo thing to them. It was important. Spiritual aspect. Halloween falls right in between autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. So it's a halfway period. And it's believed that it's another portal time where there, you know, the veil is thinner and it's easier to get in touch with the beyond, with our ancestors. Well, all the Christians came, and of course that was all scary and demonic to them, so they completely demonized it all. And what did they cover it up with? All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day, which is now, instead of celebrating, you know, Scorpio energy, which is the beyond, the dark, death, your ancestors. Instead, we're going to celebrate saints that are perfect and they never make mistakes and they never, you know, they just radiate light and the birds fly on them and all this stuff. And look what's happened. We're still suppressing Scorpio in our culture. This culture is totally bipolar. On one side we say, oh yeah, everyone can be free, you know, pornography, that's like a human right. You know, feminists are like, yeah, women should just walk around topless now because for some reason that's a woman's right and that's getting in tune with your femininity. And at the same time, we're a completely Christian culture. We still have all this subconscious guilt with sex and all this stuff. So look at Halloween and everyone's dressing up. All the girls are dressing up in this skimpy, you know, sexual outfits, and everyone's all like, it's all about taboos and, you know, partying and whatnot. And it's just this huge smorgasbord mess of all these different cultures and the energy. And it's just too perfect because this is Scorpio. Yeah, it's perfect. It's, you know, it's complicated, you know, it's emotional, it's pushing on people's comfort zones, you know, it's perfect. And this is Kali Ma too. So I'm very, very fond of Kali Ma, and the reason I'm fond of Kali and her devotees is not only is she the living symbol of Scorpio, but what her and her devotees do is they are constantly pushing on people's comfort zones. You know, that's why I like her and I like sharing her around, because nobody else does. But the point of, you know, at the end of the day, the point is we need to start learning about her. We need to start submerging ourselves in this emotional, dark, taboo area. You know, this is what Tantra is all about. Integrating darkness, you could say, is Tantra. And what Tantra is it's eliminating duality, eliminating this separation that we have placed with everything. The fall of Adam and Eve comes from the fact that they ate the apple of knowledge of good and evil. It's this separation. It's this, there's good over here and there's evil over here, that damns us, because that's not how reality is. There is no knowledge of good and evil that keeps you in a place that isn't fallen. The knowledge of good and evil keeps you low. It keeps you in fear. It keeps you in paranoia. It keeps you in dualistic fight the enemy mentality. But what do Kali devotees do? Kali devotees live their lives in the cremation grounds. They eat from the cremations. They drink out of skulls, you know, all this stuff. And you know, it's not like, I'm not saying that all Kali devotees are, you know, all enlightened and perfect, But the reason they are doing that is they are pushing on everybody's comfort zones. And they're doing that by saying, this is making you feel really uncomfortable, but is it making me feel uncomfortable? No. They have transcended this dualistic nature. You know, they live in the cremation grounds and they're okay. They're saying, look at me, I have transcended dualistic reality. This is what Tantra is. And I really need to clarify, I spoke with a Buddhist monk a year or two ago. I was using the name Tantra in reference to tantric sex, and he said, stop using the name Tantra that way. That's not what Tantra means. There are several hundred Buddhist canons on the Tantras, and only one of them even mentions sex. So it is not just sex that I'm talking about. Tantra is the integration of both sides in order to transcend duality. So there's this really deeply ingrained mentality that in order to be spiritual, God-loving beings, we must obey the spiritual rules. You know, and these are rules that are handed, you know, they come from the Bible, they come from the Old Testament, they come from the priests, you know, all these people that are supposedly representative of God. But the real point of Tantra and this understanding and this left-handed path that eventually everybody on the spiritual path will have to confront is that in this culture, which is so messed up and perverted and not knowing the spiritual rules, sometimes you please God by following His rules, sometimes you please God by breaking them. This is a time period of stepping into our inner strength, our inner soul level invincibility, which is beyond these silly good and bad, black and white, you know, me versus you, you know, the good guys versus the bad guys mentality. It's time to evolve, it's time to grow up, it's time to mature. That is what the underlying root theme of where we are right now is. We are growing very quickly, we are maturing very quickly. That's why it's not easy, that's why it's not comfy, but at the end of the day, it's really, really good for us. It's a fast path. Scorpio and Kali is a fast path. If you want to get over your fears, you face them directly, you face them quickly, you get it over and done with. You don't keep perpetuating it. So I'm going to conclude this probably pretty long now report with a story that happened with my stepdaughter a few days ago that I think is a perfect symbol, metaphor for the energy that each of us are going through in our own personal way. And that is dinner time. Not very good at trying new foods. So Mom thought of a new idea where every dinner we're going to try at least one new food that the adults are eating. Okay? So there's one noodle with red sauce when she typically only eats white sauce that has to be eaten, and there's this huge explosion, a temper tantrum, all this fear comes forth, all this paranoia. And you know, when kids flip out, everybody, you know, likes to scoff at them because, you know, it's not a big deal, right? But they're reliving past life stuff, and it is a big deal for them. That's why you get these huge emotions. They're remembering things subconsciously. So there's this huge, like, you know, I have to be in a body, I have to eat food to survive. There's all this, like, you know, trauma. I have to obey rules. If I don't eat this noodle, I have to go to bed now. So there's this huge explosion. And she gets all the explosion out. This is key. She gets all of this fear and paranoia, you know, temper tantrum, crying, crying, crying. It's important that we go through this. We have to release all these things. That's most important, is we better freak out. We better let it all out. So she lets it all out, then we sit down, we have a talk to her, be just like, listen, the reason we want you to try the noodle is because we want you to get over your fears. You're a really strong kid, you know, and you're growing up. You're becoming a big kid. That means you're expanding your horizons. That means that you're tasting new foods and you're growing. And guess what? She sits down at the table after all this and shaking, you know, eats the noodle. She likes the damn thing. She's eating out of the bowl of noodles, and she's saying how she wants it for dinner the next day. After all that huge explosion, an hour of tears and all that, at the end of the day, she's stronger, and she's just gotten rid of all that paranoia and all that fear. There's going to be no more crying about having to eat red noodles for the rest of her life. What a perfect symbol for what each and all of us are probably having to deal with during this week. We're dealing with it in super personal, inner, deep down, subconscious ways. We're dealing with emotions that are so personal that they have to go back to past lives. I mean, use your mind, really rationalize these things. Would you be having such an emotional overreaction if it wasn't connected to something deeper? So let's get into it. Let's all get it out on the table. You know, just get it out, get it over with, you know, spill the beans. Because we're going to be maturing, we're going to be growing, and we're going to be over it all soon enough. And then we'll really be standing in our strength, and then we're really going to be able to get stuff rolling and get work done. Okay, so happy solar eclipse. You can get in contact with me, send me an email, I'll get you an eclipse chart, I'll give you a Mercury retrograde chart. Same thing as before, make a donation on the front page of my website, and what you feel is appropriate, I'll send you all that stuff straight to your email. So I'm wishing you the best during this time, and we'll talk next week. Namaste.